For Sunday, November 27th, you found the Georgia Gang. Topping our agenda today, will illegal aliens get all the tuition rights at our state's universities? In Atlanta, a crowded field for mayor. We're going to break it all down for you. And has Donald Trump made his first major mistake? Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia Gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
And good morning. We're glad you could be with us. We hope you shake off the tryptophan, that you're alert and ready to watch our particular brand of discussion on politics and news. I hope you had a good holiday weekend. Phil, your wheelhouse has been immigration for a number of years, and I'm bothered by the protests of illegals. We're not going to do this undocumented stuff. These are illegal aliens wanting full tuition rights, in-state tuition, at state universities, and they want to break down that barrier to their attending Georgia Tech, Georgia State, and the University of Georgia. They're illegal.
Well, just a little history for the viewers, and I think y'all remember back in 2010, the legislature was grappling with this problem and what should happen in the university system. And by law, you do have to educate anyone here in this country, regardless of their status, K through 12. The question is what happens after graduation of high school. I never liked, and a lot of people never liked, what the regents decided. They cut the baby in half, and they said that they'll be banned from the top 5 universities in the system, and the rest, if they're not taking slots from citizens, they can come in. So they have this admissions data, which I think they're going to have to change, bottom line. I think with the new administration coming in January, you could argue, and the regents are going to have to look at this, you could argue that they're going against federal law anyhow by admitting them. And so there are 2 colleges now, Augusta University and Georgia State, especially with Perimeter being merged with Georgia State. They're reviewing their admissions data. The key is we have to do something with these kids that have been educated here, but we have to do something. We can't have them taking slots from people who are citizens.
So it's easy for me to say, Alexis, that they're illegal. They are, but they're still entitled to a college education. I think some accommodation could be made if they are a graduate of an accredited Georgia high school. Right. There ought to be a way to allow them in-state tuition and admission to the colleges.
Well, they want to allow them out of state. They're not going to give them
No, but I'm saying give them in-state.
Okay.
Out of state's cost prohibitive for most people.
I understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, really, what does it cost?
It's an effective bar to a higher education.
So you're jumping them,
you're talking about $8,500.
So you're jumping them in line.
Well, but again, now remember what the regents wanted to do.
Is that fair, though?
Alexis, what the regents were trying to do was to say that they couldn't take spots at the competitive universities.
Right.
And Georgia Tech in particular are very competitive. But they could go other places where there was where there were fewer applicants for more spaces.
You're inviting lawsuits, however, even though that sounds great, you're inviting lawsuits because of everything we've argued.
But I want Alexis to stick up for the dreamers.
Absolutely.
You didn't get to talk last week, so I want you to talk about these dreamers.
I do want to talk about these dreamers, and it's really in our own self-interest to educate these children, because they can be productive citizens. They can invent the next newest, greatest thing, and we're blocking them from getting an education beyond high school, which makes no sense at all.
Well, Errol Davis was there in 2010 when this agreement was struck, and in the AJC on Friday, he had some interesting remarks about this. He said it makes no sense. I think that he said that it was logically stupid, quote unquote,
that's what he said,
to invest in education, K through 12, and then turn them away from a higher education.
But didn't he preside over the changes?
He did, but he said that was part of a compromise.
He did, but what we've seen, whether it was Errol Davis or whether it was Hank Huckabee, statement after statement, whether it is veiled to try not to offend, the anti-immigration crowd, is a clear statement that we ought to be educating these kids and not barring them from an education with out-of-state tuition rates.
By the way,
we have been educating them K through 12.
The conundrum is do not have slots taken from people here who have come here legally and citizens. So, well, I think everyone would be sympathetic with educating them. Yes.
And I think that that's where the
So
legislature
don't say
has split the
I don't know what this
baby.
anti-immigration crowd is. We want legal immigration in this
Well,
country.
the anti-immigration crowd are the people who want to bar them from a higher education, number one, or
We're
want to force
protecting-
them
we're
to pay
protecting
out-of-state
Americans.
tuition as if they
Protecting
haven't been
Americans.
here for the last dozen
We're
years.
protecting Americans and legal residents. Now, if you want to get a student visa, I think your proposal could be probably considered right after we get control of our borders. That's been the problem, as we all know,
Well,
for 25
let's
years.
spin right now because
Okay.
we've got this problem now with Donald Trump becoming the new president. This problem of sanctuary cities, and Phil and I have talked. They're not really well defined.
No.
The clear, prominent ones are San Francisco, Chicago. Atlanta is, or maybe is not, a sanctuary city, right?
Well, Kasim Reed gave an interview the other day, and he said, you know, we aren't really going to work with the feds on immigration status. Those were the words that he used. I think that's irresponsible, and I'm a little surprised he said that, because in this day and age, just forget the economic impact of illegal immigration, the taking of jobs from Atlantans. What about security reasons? And so there's nothing wrong. You can be a welcoming, inclusive city. That's no problem with that. But you ought to at least work with the feds on for security reasons to and this is where the definition comes in, work with ICE, immigration control and enforcement, to have holds on criminals, murderers, rapists that have come into this country.
I don't think that
you should agree with that.
I don't think that the mayor is saying that we're not going to go after
Right.
criminals, whether they are
He said he's
born
not
and
cooperating.
raised in Atlanta,
Yeah, but-
or they come from some foreign country. And
But you
that's
saw the-
not
you
at
saw the
all
police-
was the basis of a statement.
You saw
I
the
think that
police
you're
chief of Los
mischaracterizing his
Angeles, to
statement.
my astonishment, the police chief of Los Angeles said, and I suspect George Turner here in Atlanta would say the same thing, police chief in LA said, our officers are charged with enforcing criminal laws. We don't do civil laws. I thought, what? What is that guy talking about? And the point is that here in Cobb and Gwinnett, we have well-established programs where the sheriffs work with ICE and they detain and deport criminal illegal aliens.
Right, and
Right.
that's as it
Criminal.
should be, criminals.
And even in Sheriff Ted Jackson in Fulton County works with ICE. At first he didn't, and then he said this is a good idea because
Well,
of terrorism.
and
But Jeff,
but it
I
all
wish
goes
you'd
back-
talk to the mayor that he and the police chief need to work. If there's some serious violent criminals, they need
we're
to have
trying
a
to
hold.
make it seem like
We're
there's no
overrun.
policy in place that has been in place for years, for decades. Barack Obama is referred to by a lot of people who think that he's gone too far as deporter in chief. He has deported 2.5 million people, Phil. 91% of them, let me finish.
Okay.
91% of them were criminals or had a criminal record.
That's
and this
fine.
does not include people who were turned away at the border. And so to say that all of a sudden we're making up some new policy, as Trump has tried to do and the anti-immigration crowd has tried to do, and we're going to start deporting these criminal
Well,
aliens,
you know,
that's
you're not.
absurd.
You're not addressing.
You've
You're
been
not
doing it
addressing.
for the last 10 years.
That's a nice
Let me
sermon. I'm
rephrase
not
this.
talking about Barack Obama. I'm talking about your buddy Kasim Reed.
I'm
Do you want
talking
to talk
about
Kasim
Kasim Reed
He
too,
doesn't
and
want to work with the feds.
cooperating with state and federal officials on all matters relating to
Here's the
crime
problem.
and criminal
Well,
activity.
Here's the problem. You got Chicago, where you on a routine weekend, you get 40 people shot and killed. And you got the mayor of Chicago saying he won't cooperate with the feds on immigration. What we're doing is we're setting an example of liberal lawlessness all across this country in our great urban areas,
come on.
and we're saying we're going to violate the law, and there's
What
nothing you can do about it.
Alexis,
What
what
we're
if
saying
the
is,
city
well,
of
here's the thing: the federal government needs to handle this because it's a federal issue.
Yes, working
And
with
so-
locals.
Well, I'm talking about the whole immigration reform matter. That has been dragging on for
Well, you can't have
30
sanctuary cities
years.
if you're doing immigration reform. What if the city of Sandy Springs all of a sudden said, we're not recognizing same-sex marriages. We're a city that's just going to do that. You can't have cities making up
That's
their
what
own
I
We gotta
laws.
get
just
out.
said. The federal government needs to handle this.
We got to get out.
So you're opposed to sanctuary cities.
I'm not opposed to sanctuary cities.
We've got to get out. But look, all this discussion is fine, but there is a new sheriff in town. Huh?
There's a new president
There's a
coming
new
in,
sheriff
and
in
a new
town.
attorney general.
Okay, when we
Lordy,
come back,
lordy.
our analysis of, I know, politics, you've probably had enough, but really, 2017 is going to be a fascinating year in the cities in the state of Georgia. We're going to start today by looking at the many candidates for mayor of Atlanta. Be back in a minute.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
I tasked your favorite Sunday crew over the Thanksgiving weekend with taking a good hard look at the Atlanta mayor's race. We've had so much political news in 2016 that the usual mayoral maneuvering has been outside our gaze. We just didn't have room for it. But I think now it's time to discuss it, because it's not just an ordinary race for mayor in Atlanta. It could be a huge social change. For example, we could have another white mayor of Atlanta after 40 years of African Americans. We could have a homosexual mayor. I don't think we could have a Hispanic mayor so far. I don't think that's happening. But Kasim Reed's term ends at the end of 2017. And by the way, I don't know what he's going to do. Maybe he'll go to the Atlanta Housing Authority. The salaries look pretty good over there. But Alexis, you pulled off a list. You did your homework.
I did. I'm not going to read it off, but it's like 15 names. Where's the camera? 15 names of people who are
amazing
running, and there's even a Wikipedia site. This is where this came from for the Atlanta mayor's race.
Well, and it's also interesting that in the main, those 15 names, and I don't know all of them, but they're actually capable people. It's not a clown show.
Right.
These are mostly serious candidates for mayor who have a background in government. Well, let's start. We've got the city council president, Caesar Mitchell.
Yes.
We've got sitting council members like Kwanzaa Hall, Keisha Lance Bottoms. Who else?
Right.
Who am I leaving out?
Mary Norwood.
Mary Norwood,
Norwood.
who came within 600 votes of Kasim Reed 7 years ago.
That's right.
Right? I mean, amazing. So,
well, there's some other good names there. If you want to just tell the viewers, you have Peter
Ammon. He worked for both the current mayor and the previous mayor, Shirley Franklin, as
COO.
Chief Operating Officer.
That's right.
And who else is on here?
Rob Pitts, who was a longtime Fulton County
Rob
Commissioner.
Pitts is not declared
No,
as of now, to my knowledge.
we're the great mentioners.
These are just the great mentioners, right? And
right.
so I think that we mentioned Kwanzaa.
Right.
Kwanzaa is also one of those who's mentioned.
Can you
but it's
have
not
a mayor
declared.
named after a holiday?
Well, it's not a holiday. I didn't know that Hall was a holiday.
Well, it is if you're at Hallmark
Michael
Cards.
Sterling, who's the former director of the Atlanta Workforce Development Agency. That was a surprise to many people.
Michael is one of the younger people who's out there running.
All right,
but I will say this about the field. It's large. It's a little bit crowded, but it is highly qualified. It's a highly qualified field. Some people who've done
and don't forget Vincent Ford, the state's
That's right. And late last week,
That's exactly
Vincent Ford, the sort of the radical rabble-rouser of the city,
Sanders.
announced that he's running for mayor. Now, we've left out a name that I think is right there at the top, and that's Kathy Woolard, the city council president from a long time ago.
Right.
Kathy Woolard is always underestimated. She is a terrific campaigner and organizer. And she's proven that she's very popular. She was elected citywide a couple of times.
Right, that's right.
So I think
we're going to have some numbers come out at the end of the year in terms of fundraising, and I think that they're going to say a lot. And I think that some of the folks who are going to be looking at contributing to these campaigns are going to be looking at those numbers and making a decision on who they think the most credible candidates are.
I think Jeff's right, and I think, as we all know, we watch these things with such a big field. There's obviously a runoff provision. If you can just get that percentage, whether it's 15 or 20% or something like that, you get into the runoff.
It looks like it's going to be tough with so many candidates when their own constituencies, built-in constituencies, for any one person to get much above, I would think, I don't know, 20 or 30% of the vote, because there are just so many people running.
Well, it's going to be like the old days when City of Atlanta politics was blood sport. And when you campaigned, as they used to say, ward by ward, right?
Yeah,
this is going to be fun.
And it's a much different city.
Well, the white vote has increased within the city limits of Atlanta, and this has caused your African American candidates to build more bridges to white communities, neighborhoods, and businesses.
Yeah, and like, for example, along with that increase in the white population, there's been a huge increase in the last decade, particularly in homosexual voters. So you've got Kathy Woolard, who is a lesbian.
Midtown.
No big deal. She's got a big base with the gay vote.
Now, let's go back.
That's a built-in base for somebody like Kathy Woolard to get into that runoff.
Well,
you're right.
I agree. I think that probably for Kathy, an even bigger calling card is her association with the Beltline, which is the most popular thing going on in the city of Atlanta, right?
You say.
And she was She was very instrumental in helping to make the Beltline happen. And so I think that probably gives her a lot of credibility with a lot of the younger folks in town. But yeah, there are all of these very different constituencies out there. Obviously, Peter Amon has one.
You'll have a business in Buckhead constituency.
Exactly right. And folks like Caesar and Keisha Lance Bottoms on the southwest side have got a sort of built-in constituencies as well. And so that's why I think it's going to be a chance. And with Vincent,
go back to
Vincent. He gets the
he's got Black Lives Matter. He calls his campaign openly an insurgent campaign.
And he's also suggesting that he would decriminalize marijuana, recreational marijuana.
He's part of all those dissident movements. $15 an hour wage, SEIU. Shut down airports. If it's something bad for America, Vincent Ford's for it. So he's going to get a lot of votes.
He's going to run really strong, but what you see are a lot of candidates with just these little disparate pockets of support. And the question is, how do you
stitch all that together?
How do you stitch it together? And how do you broaden that support?
We got to get out. Let me just say, I think it's going to be very difficult for any of the members of the city council to distinguish themselves, to set themselves apart, because Kasim Reed has been a dominant mayor. City policy has been Kasim Reed, not the council. So I think it's going to be, unlike in years past, I think it's going to be a little more difficult for them to break out of that pack and get into that runoff. All right, when we come back, it says here on my face that Donald Trump's made his first major mistake of his presidency elect. We'll be back in a minute.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
Okay, so I wasn't a major Donald Trump guy early on in 2015 and 2016, but he is the president-elect, and the silent majority of Americans, the working class, the aggrieved middle class, have spoken. And now Donald Trump I was getting used to the guy. I was thinking, this is good. He's doing some interesting things.
No, he's not.
Don't do that.
And then he said, totally unnecessarily, that he did not intend to pursue the investigations of Hillary Clinton. She runs the Clinton Family Crime Foundation.
Oh, please.
That foundation is a nexus for foreign intervention in the United States. It violates our security. It is a quid pro quo operation, and the FBI is looking into it. Why not? Why didn't Donald Trump, Phil, you're a major Trump defender in this group. Why didn't he just say, not my job, the FBI is investigating, we'll see where the chips fall?
I think that Trump was signaling that we want to try to have a unified process in January. He's got this very ambitious agenda. He's trying to get some bipartisan support for infrastructure, obviously immigration, jobs. Although I will say his new chief of staff coming in, Reince Priebus, did say, now, if there's a new bombshell with your Clinton Foundation, then we would have to relook at that. And so they do have a caveat there.
He possibly doesn't want any investigation because he doesn't want them to look anymore into his own foundation.
Notice I'm not talking about the emails, by the way. I'm talking about the foundation.
That's what I'm saying. He doesn't want people looking at his own foundation, where he's had to confess that he violated the nonprofit status of his foundation and has received foreign gifts for making foreign speeches himself.
Well, there's a difference between...
I've argued that we really don't know who this guy is. I mean, he doesn't have any underlying principles that guide him. He's not a Ronald Reagan. He's not even a Ted Cruz. We don't know if he's liberal or conservative. We do know that he's malleable and that his latest opinion depends on who he last spoke to. For instance, let's take not just that, the issue with whether or not he's going to pursue Clinton, which is not in his purview, by the way. It's in the Justice Department.
It's the FBI.
But just look at the issue of torture. During the campaign, he said the waterboarding was okay. He talked to a general who said, I can do better with a couple of beers and a pack of cigarettes, and so now that's his position. What I'm saying to you is, in the absence of any underlying principles that guide you on whether it is what happens with the Justice Department, what happens with torture, what happens with taxes, if you don't have those, if you don't have some underpinning principles, you're going to be all over the lot. And we just don't know where this president is going to end
where
up.
He's going to land.
When he talks to Obama about Obamacare, he comes out and all of a sudden he's in favor of some of the main tenets of the program.
So the Republicans.
So the Republicans always do. But to Jeff's point,
Romney care.
You're known, I think all of you know, whatever the president is, Barack Obama, George W. Bush, Donald Trump, you're known by the people around you. He's got some great appointments of some very experienced people. And I think we know what some of these policies are. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, I think you're going to know what some of he's going to enforce the rule of law.
Do you know Sessions' middle name?
Beauregard.
It's a good
Beauregard.
southern name. Good southern.
Beauregard,
Lordy,
the
Lordy, have
Confederate
mercy.
general from the state of Louisiana.
That's right.
Jefferson Beauregard Sessions.
Yes.
The
That
third or
is an
something.
old-fashioned
That's-
Southern appointment.
Yes, it is.
But
He
you
will be
know, the
Attorney
point
General.
is, you're known by the people. And Jeff, I think you're going to see these policies evolving with some of the people. We don't know as we tape who's going to be Secretary of State. That's going to be
Well,
very
it's interesting that he appointed Nikki Haley, the governor of South Carolina, to be the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations.
Yes, a very interesting appointment.
Well, it is, and I think he's trying to bring together different types of people. He's looking at the Democrat Bernie Sanders supporter, Tulsi Gabbard, a Democrat congressman from Hawaii,
Right.
for a cabinet position. He might even be looking at Harold Ford from Tennessee, the former black congressman, as transportation. So,
No, he's still a black, but he's the former congressman.
but I want, yeah.
Former black guy.
But the point is,
Excuse me.
you accuse
sorry,
him,
Phil.
you accuse him of not being inclusive, but he's doing all of this inclusiveness.
I haven't
Oh, yeah,
accused
he's being
him of
very
being
inclusive. He's going
But
back
the
to
other
higher,
thing that was interesting this week, too, is that he reported after meeting with the editors and folks at the New York Times, they came out that he said that he really fell in love with Obama when they met. He was prepared not to like him, but he really liked him, and he thinks he really liked him, too. And he's had several conversations subsequent to that first meeting.
Well,
So
we
who
still
knows
don't
what
know
he's
what the
gonna
fate
do.
of the Georgians is. We don't know, for example, whether Newt Gingrich is going to get a formal position as a senior advisor,
Or once one.
or whether he's just going to be on the
Freelancing out
outside
there.
Well, actually,
advising.
he has stated, as we've taped, that he wants to be on the outside. He
Right.
wants to
No, I
continue his
understand.
Fox.
But is it a formal spot? Does he
Well,
get
yeah.
White House access? You know, that kind
Oh
of
yeah.
thing. Okay.
Yeah, he's gonna.
And Tom Price,
advise.
I still think that's the decision that might keep Tom Price awake at night. Does he take the job at Health and Human Services, overseeing the bureaucracy and the end to Obamacare, or does he stay in Congress and oversee the dismantling of Obamacare, the balancing of the budget, and all those other things he can do?
What was the opposite of dismantle?
If you're
To
Ben
put
Car-
together the Trump care.
If you're Ben Carson, an accomplished, renowned surgeon,
Correct.
aren't you a little insulted by being asked to be housing secretary?
No, after the AJC
Well, he
revealed...
turned down HHS. You do realize that was the first offer. He said himself that he was offered that, he turned it down.
Well, he said that he wasn't qualified to be to head up
administrator.
bureaucracy. Well, let me tell you, housing and urban
Well,
development
that's
is
right.
gotta get out.
I think that was a case of a
Right.
dumb advisor, quote unquote. I love these advisors that
What was
speak for these people.
That was a dumb, what's his name, that ran against Obama in Illinois? What was, Armstrong Williams.
Armstrong Williams, oh please.
Yeah, Carson never said
we
that.
He's
got
been
to
working
get out of it. We won't have time for winners and losers. Let me just say this: Ben Carson might be interested in HUD for the same reason Kasim Reed may be interested in the Housing Authority. Those are huge salaries.
Those are not huge
Albeit
salaries, and I
illegal.
think that Kasim Reed can do an awful lot better and will in
of
private
course,
practice.
of course he will. Of course he will. All right. When we come back, it will be winners and losers on this Thanksgiving weekend.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And I'll begin today with you, Jeff.
Well, my winner, I've already mentioned, is going to be Errol Davis for his very clear, powerful statements, I think, on whether or not we should be educating kids who've gone through the K-12 system in Georgia. And I think he was exactly right. You've made an investment, probably somewhere around $100,000 already in each of these kids, right, who've gone through the
Did he need to
K-12
call
system.
his colleagues Jim Crow guys?
Well, you know, I don't think that it was calling his guy
He said
Jim
the
Crow.
system.
But what we're doing, and I think that it needs to be acknowledged, is when you deny people an education, you're not making the kind of investment in your state that you ought to be making. And where that is the standard, there's a clear parallel. No loser.
Alexis, what do you have?
Okay, I'm going to salute Winnie Hiphill, president of Southview Cemetery, Mac Wilborn, owner of Mac 2, and Nina Gilreath and Waverly T. Lucas. They were inducted into the Atlanta Business League Hall of Fame and for their business acumen and their businesses.
Okay. And Phil, what do you have?
Well, I think that we ought to note that I don't know if he's a winner or a loser, but he was one of the most colorful, controversial lawmakers back in the day, Roscoe Dean. And he died at age 80. And he ran for governor. He was arrested for smuggling marijuana. He was known in all the Atlanta night spots.
A story I was in the middle of. I'll never forget when a federal snitch came to me and we had dinner, and he told me about Roscoe Dean importing illegal drugs.
Yes.
My jaw, I couldn't
Couldn't believe it.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and he was convicted of it.
And as a prank in the legislature, they would do this crazy speech and have him read it, and he just read this craziness.
And
so
you know the most famous one. He's
No.
reading the speech, he's going along, and he's in a high oratorical flourish, and he says, "And insert joke here."
Yeah.
You read it right off
I
the
got
paper.
another winner. I got another winner I
the
want to
joke
squeeze
there.
in. I want to squeeze in another winner, and that is Commissioner Nancy Jester over in DeKalb County. Finally, you know, she and I actually visited that Brannon Hills condo place, burned out. It's a third world hellhole. Finally, a judge in Fulton County has said, let's
Fulton,
tear
DeKalb.
Fulton, yeah, excuse,
DeKalb.
It was a DeKalb judge?
I thought it was DeKalb. Well, I don't know.
It's in
Go ahead.
DeKalb.
Okay, but anyhow, they're going to raise these terrible buildings, so that's going to be a winner.
We get it. My last winner is Walter Banks, the great usher, along behind the Braves dugout. Uber is going to drive him to the games at the new SunTrust Park. Walter Banks is an American original, a true gentleman, and absolutely part of the Braves. Happy Thanksgiving again, everyone. We'll see you next week on the Georgia Gang.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.